welcome to Washington Central. I'm Saurabh Shukla, and I have a special guest with me today here in Washington, D.C., Don Camp, a distinguished diplomat who has served in South Asia. He served in China, and also now he's a senior non-resident fellow at CSIS here in Washington, D.C. Welcome to Washington Central, Don.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Don, let's set the ball rolling. We are in the midst of a crisis. President Trump had to return back from G7, and Israel-Iran conflict is raging. Where do you see this impacting the world, and also where does the U.S.-India relationship stand at this time?
Sure. It's obviously an enormously important and difficult time. Washington and the president are grappling with how to handle this world crisis, which could balloon out of control. And that would have, of course, global effects, and including in the energy market and strategically. I would point out also, strictly from the U.S.-India point of view, that when there are major crises around the world, especially in the Mideast, Washington's ability to deal with a lot of events at the same time is limited. The bandwidth in the White House, the bandwidth in the National Security Council, everyone now is focused on Israel and Iran. And that means, frankly, less time to deal with other issues. South Asia is not in crisis, and therefore South Asia will drop a little bit in the agenda of things that have to be done in the State Department and the White House.
You've seen the trajectory of US-India partnership growing from the time when the nuclear test in 1998 happened, and obviously India had sanctions put against it. And from the relationship that we have now, Prime Minister Modi had a very successful visit to Washington, D.C. And obviously there have been, I would say, some bumps along the way. But where do you see this relationship going from here on under President Trump and Prime Minister Modi?
Well, at my age, I have lots of perspective, and my perspective goes back to the days of actually Rajiv Gandhi, when he came to Washington and was looking for assistance with a supercomputer for weather forecasting and the like. That was 40 years ago, and things have changed so dramatically that I have to be optimistic that the future will continue to go to be very positive for U.S.-India relations. You mentioned the nuclear test in 1998. I was in the Clinton National Security Council at the time, and it was like, everything was sanctions on India and Pakistan in May 1998. And that quickly changed. By March 2000, less than 2 years later, President Clinton had a dramatic and very successful state visit to India, and a much shorter and somewhat less successful visit to Pakistan. So things can change quickly, but since 2000, it's really been on the upswing. And I think that that is where our future lies.
Yeah. You spoke about, you were there in the Clinton administration. How did you guys miss the nuclear test? Did you think that, was there a miss, somebody, or the Indians were smarter?
It was in the BJP political platform. It was public. I won't say we weren't paying attention. We certainly were. But no one thought that it would actually happen until suddenly we saw it on CNN at 9 o'clock in the morning, Washington time. And it was a stunner. And it was very embarrassing for our intelligence services, I would say. And we reacted accordingly.
Yes, absolutely. So you didn't have to wake up in the middle of the night. At least,
that's right. That's
yeah. So coming to what's happening now, there are some, I would say, differences that India and the US are ironing out when it comes to tariffs. obviously, when it comes to Operation Sindoor, uh, India appreciated the fact that U.S. Condemned what happened in Pahalgam. Vice President J.D. Vance happened to be in India when this thing happened. Post that, there is a sense in some quarters that India and Pakistan are getting de-hyphenated back. Do you think that's the case, or people are misreading what's really happening?
I don't think that's true. I think India and Pakistan are on very different tracks in Washington, and that's probably inevitable for the future. You've dealt in your previous podcasts with Trump foreign policy, and this is an example of that, where
Yeah.
Trump cannot help himself in taking credit for things that maybe should be done more quietly and more diplomatically. And any South Asia specialist could advise the president that taking credit for resolving a India-Pakistan crisis is not a thing that will earn any plaudits in India, and that's what he did. And I think that Delhi is probably dealing with this fairly diplomatically. They understand Washington, they understand President Trump, and I don't think they've overreacted. But he can't come out tomorrow and say he's going to solve Kashmir for India and Pakistan. That's cratered the careers of many American diplomats in the past. We're beyond that.
Don, you have served in the NSC, which is like the real power center at the White House, advising the president. So for a lot of our younger viewers and listeners who are watching us across the globe, just run us through how does the decision making happen here in the White House? Who all advises the president when it comes to a country-specific decision? What all goes into that whole play?
Well, that's a good question. The role of the National Security Council, which sits in the West Wing of the White House, is to basically coordinate the positions of our bureaucracy, the State Department, the Defense Department, the CIA, the Commerce Department, the Trade Representative, and bring all this together and present options to the president. That's how it's supposed to work. This president has significantly decreased the influence of the NSC. His national security advisor at the moment is the same person as his Secretary of State, Mario Rubio. And as we know, President Trump doesn't like to read long briefing papers. He likes to get oral briefings from people around him. So that makes people like Rubio and Vice President Vance, or the last person who talked to him in the Oval Office, very significant. He has appointed the appointments he's made so far in the South Asia field strike me as very good. He's got Ricky Gill, a longtime confidant of his, as the South Asia specialist senior director in the NSC, and he's got Paul Kumar, who has a history of studying U.S.-India relations in academia and at the State Department as his assistant secretary for South Asia. So he's got, and he hasn't appointed the nominated an ambassador to Delhi. That will obviously be very important. But the important thing is he's got good people working on India and Pakistan and South Asia. If they are influential, if they can get their views to him through the National Security Council.
One of the things that, obviously has been happening in diplomacy is the role of informal channels. A lot of people who wield influence beyond the White House, beyond State Department. How much of these actors do you think will play a role when it comes to modern day diplomacy as we see it today?
Well, again, it comes down to personalities. I think that that element is very influential in the Trump presidency. He has lots of people that he talks to all the time. He's obviously a very easily accessible president if you happen to have his personal phone number. He answers his phone, for heaven's sakes. So that gives room for lots of advice that does not come through government channels. I hope it is well-informed advice, and I hope it is, analyzed by his NSC and by his State Department, so that it's not just arbitrary, someone's particular opinion that he's trying to get pushed for his or her own interests at the White House. But yes, that's always been out there. Congress is influential. Congress has a significant India caucus that makes its views known, and that's good as far as I'm concerned. But I don't want some, advisor with an agenda, with a personal agenda,
Sure.
getting access to the president and convincing him that he should proceed on a path that probably does not serve our national interest, that hasn't been vetted by the bureaucracy.
Where do you see, the pillars that will guide the U.S.-India partnership in the next 5 years, if you were to pick some?
Yes, good question. I mean, China has always been an important factor in U.S.-India relations. And we have, I think, common interests in both countries, in Delhi and in Washington, in confronting or dealing with a China that is aggressively expanding its reach technologically, militarily, economically around the world. But that's not all. I mean, there's a lot more than that. U.S.-India relations will depend on cooperation in information technology, in trade in general, in social and cultural realms. The diaspora in the U.S. has become significantly more important. And I have to mention the Quad, which is the four-country consortium, Japan, Australia, the U.S. and India, which is working together very effectively, I think, to sort of coordinate and deal with issues not just in Asia, but around the world.
You mentioned about China. A lot of people, and you serve there, you've studied China closely. Can you really trust China and the Chinese leadership? Because that's something is a big question, whether it's in New Delhi or in Washington, D.C. A lot of people think that they may like to get you on the table to talk to you, but in reality, there's something else which is in their mind. They want to be the global dominant superpower.
Yeah, they are very good diplomats. They are very effective in relationship building, as they are doing in Africa and South America, all around the world, really. I think they have to be dealt with cautiously, prudently, and with an understanding that they are pursuing their own national interests very, very actively. So we, both India and the U.S., have to deal with them bearing our own interests in mind and cooperating where we can, but pushing back where we think it's important to do so. We can't, I'll give you an example. We cannot let them sort of dominate crucial parts of the international economy. And I mean, the recent brouhaha over strategic minerals is a case in point.
Absolutely.
India has such minerals, the United States does, but apparently China has, over the years, become the main processor of these, producing the magnets that we never knew about that are crucial to electric vehicles and computers and so many necessities of everyday life. So it's a good area for India-U.S. cooperation, developing the kind of industry that allows us to make sure that China is not the monopoly provider of such crucial items.
Yeah. One of the things that obviously U.S. and India are concerned about is the impact they face, as citizens, and any robust democracy, they face the dangers of terrorism. How can U.S. India fight out the scourge of terrorism and to make sure that they deepen and intensify the cooperation?
Of course, that's an issue that affects all of us. And India has been the most recent victim of it. I think we have cooperated for quite a while. It's mostly behind the scenes. because it is obviously one of the more sensitive areas of our cooperation, an area where it's in everyone's interest to keep the actual cooperation secret. But after the Taj Mahal hotel bombings in Bombay, we worked really, really closely with India to provide our intelligence and to give them access to information that we could provide about the perpetrators. So we have a common interest in counterterrorism. We have worked very closely on it before, and I have every confidence that that cooperation will continue.
Yeah. Don, one of the cornerstones for the US has been to attract the best and the brightest. That has been the reason why US has always dominated the global stage, because you had the best students coming to some of your world-class universities. But the recent events have obviously, even in countries like India, a lot of parents are worried whether US is the right kind of destinations. What would be your advice to decision makers who may be watching us today, or some of the skeptics who believe that they should be sending their students to other countries, because that's a big concern?
It's a huge question, of course, and it really depends on how we look at our immigration policy. Our immigration policy in the past has been, we welcome people from other countries to come and study in the United States, and in fact stay if they are interested in staying and wanting to contribute to our country. That's kind of an open door policy, and that seems to have changed in the last 4 months, and that's very disturbing to a lot of us here as well as in India. I'm glad to know that India continues to be, at the present, the largest supplier of foreign students to our colleges and universities. That's been an enormous benefit to the United States over the years. I hope that will continue. I hope that our immigration laws will acknowledge that reality, and our immigration policy will continue to welcome students from around the world.
If you were to advise, our world leaders, what's happening here in Washington, D.C., how do, and you've seen different White Houses, how does the world engage with President Trump's White House? What are the 3 advices that you would give it to a world leader today who may be watching us?
Well, I think you have to look at who's got Trump's ear at the moment, and that's obviously Vice President Vance. It's Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, both of whom have personal ties, in a sense, to India, and obviously Marco Rubio. So, it's the traditional channels of diplomacy in Washington, if you will, as far as India is concerned. I will say that India is very lucky to have, as its foreign minister, Mr.
Jaishankar, yeah,
who knows America very well. He served in the embassy here, both as a junior officer and as ambassador. He knows when Capitol Hill gets infuriated by an issue. He knows the nuances of Washington policy, and I think that's very helpful. And that's what New Delhi needs to understand, that not just following Donald Trump's social media feeds, but looking at what the issues are and how they're being dealt with by all of the power centers in Washington, including the U.S. Congress.
And do you also see the GOP, I would say, the Congressional Caucus playing a key role? Because there are a lot of key bills, like at this moment, as we're talking, the big budget, the big beautiful bill, as it's called, it still has to be passed by Senate. So do you think those lawmakers will also play a pivotal role when it comes to foreign policy?
I think they will make an effort to. Marco Rubio, when he was in the Senate, was certainly crucial to that effort. And I believe that Congress will assert its role. You mentioned the GOP caucus. One of the nice things about U.S. India policy in Washington is it really is bipartisan. Both
Absolutely.
countries both parties have always worked for more positive relations with India, and I think we can count on that to continue. So to the extent that they have the power to influence decisions, those decisions will be in favor of better U.S.-India relations.
One of the big questions that is being asked, in fact, I was in New Delhi recently, a lot of observers asked me that, can we really trust US? Because sometimes what happens is the trust has really been built. I would say this is the best time when it comes to the bilateral relationship. But do you think that the US needs to do more to reassure the Indians that the trust will continue, that they can continue to use the strategic weapons supplied by the US in a war with Pakistan or in China in the future?
I think that question has been answered affirmatively. I mean, I come from an era when there really was distrust. The U.S. cut off arms sales during the war with Pakistan, and the effects reverberated, and people still remember it.
Yeah.
But that hasn't, I think in the 25 years since Bill Clinton went to Delhi, I don't think you can point to any period where we have come down heavily on sanctioning India, except, of course, for the nuclear sanctions in 1998, which were basically lifted after a year or two and were prompted by legal requirements for any country which exploded a nuclear device. So I think India is pretty safe depending on the United States at this point.
Before I let you go, Don, one last question. Where do you see the trajectory of the relationship? We're sitting in 2025 from here on. US and India partnership from 2025 and beyond.
I think it will become closer in terms of communications with each other. Already we have these meetings between our foreign minister and your external affairs minister, our defense minister and your defense minister, and they talk frequently. Our national security advisors talk frequently on the phone. We're in a globalized society, and that has the advantage of lots of communication, and that leads to better understanding. So I think that as our countries grow closer, as the populations grow closer, I think that our policy direction will also begin to converge even more than it used to. That would be my very optimistic prediction for the future.
Don, thank you so much for being on Washington Central. It has been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.